F1's second pre-season testing is taking place in Bahrain. Rachel Brooks has the latest from the morning session. Rachel.
Welcome to the Bahrain International Circuit. The sun is beating down here. A bit of a chilly start to the day, but it's warmed up nicely now, and I'm joined by David Croft from Sky Sports F1. And David, this is the second test. We saw the cars out in Jerez and we saw the problems Renault and Red Bull have been having. Red Bull are here now. How much work have they got to do?
Quite a lot. We got here this morning and we could hear the familiar sound of the dentist drill at the back of the Red Bull garage, which meant there was still a bit of work going on the car itself. Sebastian Vettel was stood right there having a chat to Dr. Helmut Marko, the man in charge of the Red Bull racing programme, and he didn't look like he was going to be getting into the car any moment soon as well. In fact, Sebastian then went off into the hospitality unit, and my sources indicate that he might stay there for a while, and we might not get any running from the Red Bull team until midday. So 3 hours into this second test, Red Bull are fixing their car, not getting out on the track, not getting the performance data acquired that they need, and not getting lots of running in. This is a crucial test for the champions, the constructors and the drivers' champion. They need to start finding performance, but before they can do that, they've got to find reliability, and before they can find that, they've got to find a solution that works in both engine and packaging as well. And these are nervy times, I think, for Red Bull at the moment.
We saw some cars go out this morning. We had a delayed start. There was a half-an-hour delay while they waited to get enough marshals around the track, quite incredibly here. But when they did go out, the Ferrari went out with a cloud of smoke behind it. And Fernando Alonso did stop on track during his outlap, but then managed to come back under his own steam, or under his own smoke, if you like. What happened there?
All under control, as far as Ferrari are concerned. Well, that's what they tell me anyway. Yeah, there was a bit of a fuel mixture problem there, maybe getting onto the turbo at the rear of the car and causing, as you say, that cloud of smoke. But nothing too serious, and certainly no damage done, and the Ferrari will be back out again. And what Ferrari say is that they're going to be using the next few days to start to push parts to the limit of their durability, albeit under control, they tell me as well. But they're after performance. Other teams are after performance, and we go back to Red Bull again. They just need to get out and do some laps. Remember, 21 laps from the whole of the Jerez test. That is not enough for the reigning champions.
No, and as we can see, one of their shifts leaving behind us to go back to the hotel. When we talk about what teams are hoping to achieve here, they would have been hoping to achieve sort of 1,200 to 1,600 kilometres at that Jerez test, and we know Red Bull managed just those 21 laps. 92 kilometres is all they've got under their belt. One positive, though, we saw that Lotus go out this morning, the E22. Now, that's done its filming days, and it managed 100 kilometres, and when Renault took some heat from that, thinking, well, maybe we have fixed some of the problems. Is that a good sign for the Renault team?
Oh, it's a very good sign. Any sort of running for Renault after the Jerez test is exactly what they needed. They said that there are problems that need to be fixed, and they'll be trying to fix those problems maybe up to the start of this test. And I think in the case of Red Bull, we're seeing very much that. But the fact that they got running in has got to be a fillip for them, and they'll solve it. They'll solve whatever the problems are, but it's just how much time you lose while you solve those problems. So we've not seen Toro Rosso out on the track this morning as well, another one of the Renault power unit teams, because we can't call them engines anymore. We've got to get used to calling these new units power units, and we haven't seen the Williams out on track yet as well, but the rest have been out, and it was good to see the Lotus first out of the garage. Missed, of course, the Jerez test, and it's a car that I'm told is a very nice little car, could be quite quick as well.
Great, Crofty, thank you very much. We will be talking to you more over this test. We're here in Bahrain for the first day of the second of the pre-season winter tests, and it's pretty quiet here at the moment, and that's not just because of the new power units.
Thank you. Now it's the second pre-season test in Bahrain for Formula One, and after completing just 21 laps in Jerez, Red Bull have some catching up to do. Well, Rachel Brooks joins us live there now. Very good morning to you, Rachel. Have they made up any ground yet?
Well, Alex, let me show you the scene right now, because to my left here, as I stand here, you can see a couple of other TV crews waiting, and there was a large gathering of journalists here a moment ago, because we thought finally maybe we would see the Red Bull take to the track today. But over my right shoulder, that is the Red Bull garage, and that is how it has been all day so far today. You can see the screens in front. The guys are still working on the car in there. Sebastian Vettel was due to be out in it today. The car is still on its stands as well, so not an imminent departure for that Red Bull at the moment, and their problems continue. As you mentioned, just 21 laps in Jerez. Teams would like to have done around a minimum of 1,200 kilometres, and that first 4-day test, 1,600 would have been brilliant. Well, Mercedes, the only team to get anywhere close to that with over 1,300 kilometres. Red Bull managed just 92 kilometres. All sorts of problems for them, and it all comes down to the new design of the car this year. So many changes in the regulations and the packaging underneath the shell of that RB10. Everything's packaged so tightly, there's not enough room for cooling. So Red Bull have been suffering a lot of overheating issues, and also the problems with the Renault engine. All the Renault teams suffered in Jerez, some of them faring slightly better now. But that Red Bull at the moment, they're suffering cooling issues in terms of their design, but cooling issues in terms of the Renault engine that's in that car as well. These new 1.6 V6 engines that are much quieter than we're used to. Lewis Hamilton's out on track right now, and as he went past a moment ago, I can still hear you, Alex, and that certainly wouldn't have happened last year. In fact, here he goes again.
Oh, well, maybe just about anyway. What about the other Renault-powered teams? Have they had much running today?
It has been slightly better for them. We've seen a fair bit of the Caterham this morning, but the Toro Rosso hasn't gone out, and that's another Red Bull-owned team, which is very worrying for them at the moment. We have seen the Lotus. Now, this is good news for Lotus. They didn't run in Jerez. The car wasn't ready, but they did carry out 2 days filming in Jerez last week, and they this morning were keen to get out when the lights should have gone green at 9 o'clock, but we had a half-hour delay here in Bahrain because there weren't enough marshals on the track. Finally, though, the Lotus did get out, the E22, with its forked nose, Alex. It's a very unusual looking front, the only one to have a nose of this kind here at testing so far. We are expecting the cars to change a little bit by the time we get to Melbourne, but right now the E22, the brand new Lotus with Romain Grosjean driving it today, has a forked nose. Now, elsewhere up and down the pit lane, when the lights did change this morning, the cars that did manage to get out quick to take it into the pit lane, and the Ferrari went out with clouds of smoke billowing from the back of it. And Fernando Alonso in that Ferrari today did stop on track following that exit in the pit lane, but he came back in under his own steam, or his own smoke if you like, a short while later, and that car's been out again. He's completed a fair few laps this morning, so not a serious problem for Ferrari. Looked like some overfilling perhaps of the oil. We'll find out from them later on today when we speak to the team. Elsewhere up and down the pit lane, it's been another good day for Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton's done some long runs in that Mercedes today, and they seem to be leading the field, if you like, at the moment in terms of reliability and in terms of performance. But as Lewis goes past once more, we have to watch out for McLaren and Kevin Magnussen, who tops the timesheets right now. He looked quick in Jerez. He's their new driver at the McLaren team, and he is impressing again with pace today. McLaren, of course, also running that Mercedes engine in their car, and it does seem to be the Mercedes-powered cars going well at the moment. Also watch out for Felipe Massa and the Williams today. They seem to have put a really strong team together this year, and with that Mercedes engine as well, Williams could be making their way up the grid in 2014.
OK, great. Thank you very much for now, Rachel.
It is the second pre-season test in Bahrain for Formula One. Rachel Brooks can join us live from there now. And Rachel, what have we learnt from this morning's session?
Well, Natalie, I can tell you that we've learned Red Bull haven't done much running, but as I speak, Sebastian Vettel is climbing into the RB10 and the garage door is going up, and as my cameraman shows you right now, this is the first bit of action we've seen from Red Bull today. We're 4 hours into day one of this second pre-season test. We know they only got 21 laps in Jerez in Spain, and it just really wasn't good enough. They've had so many problems with this car. They've had problems with the Renault engine, and they've had problems with cooling issues under the hood of that Red Bull inside the garage. Now, Sebastian Vettel had a very frustrating time in Jerez, didn't get much running at all. Well, now he's here for the first day of this test here in Bahrain. It's a breezy day. It's a bit cooler than the teams would have wanted. They want to really test these cars in some hotter conditions now, but it is due to pick up towards the end of this week and then into next week for the final test. But as we speak, the guys, the team here, all standing around the car and just hoping to get this car out on track. They've had no running here today so far. They've watched the other teams send their cars out. The only other team not to run here at the moment, the Toro Rosso, hasn't gone out either, and that's also a Renault-powered car. They're also having problems, and that's another Red Bull car and a Red Bull team, so it's not been good for them so far. And as we've seen here today, other teams are jumping ahead, if you like, Mercedes being one of those. Also this morning we saw the Sauber, Adrian Sutil in the Sauber in his new team this season. He spun off at the end of the start-finish line here. Where we're standing right now is the furthest distance you can get from the end of the start-finish line, but we heard the screeching tyres from here. It was not a nice spin for him, but he did get out of the car, have a good look around it, and he and the car were both returned to the garage. He hasn't been out again yet since that spin this morning, but everybody here just waiting to see if this RB10 can get out and do some running.
And Rachel, what are the teams hoping to achieve from this testing then?
Well, as I speak to you, Natalie, Lewis Hamilton has just gone past in the Mercedes, and he's doing what all the teams would like to be doing right now, and that's putting in some long runs here, really testing that car, really seeing what it can do. They'll do all sorts of tests now that they know that they've got a reliable car, which is the biggest problem for all the teams this season with these new regulations. They're now putting in some race simulations as well. Nico Rosberg got one of those in Jerez for Mercedes. Well, Lewis is doing some long runs now. He's got 2 laps left of an 18-lap run at the moment. He did 31 laps earlier on today. So Mercedes really surging ahead at the moment with their car. And also, we saw the Lotus this morning for the first time, the E22. That didn't make it to Jerez, but it went out this morning. Did 100 kilometres in some filming days, so showed that its Renault engine was performing reasonably well. As the Force India goes past me now, but that Lotus has only done seven laps so far today, so still some work to be done on that car. But it's the Renault power cars that seem to be struggling. The Mercedes powered cars, including the McLaren, seem to be looking pretty good, and Kevin Magnussen in that McLaren has posted the fastest lap time of today. We knew he was quick. Well, he's proving it again once more here in Bahrain.
OK, Rachel Brooks, thank you very much for now.
Now to Bahrain, where Red Bull have finally made it out on track after a frustrating start to second pre-season testing. All eyes were on the Red Bull garage after they completed just 21 laps at the testing in Jerez last month. The world champions continued to have problems with their design, but 3 hours after testing began, they made it out onto the track. We'll have updates throughout the day of Sebastian Vettel's progress. Ferrari had their own concerns. Fernando Alonso's car blew out smoke early in the session. They resolved the fuel problem. He returned to the track. Adrian Sutil crashed off during practice, had to have his Sauber returned to the garage. There was good news for Lotus. We got to see their new E22 car for the first time. They have the unusual fork design nose.
It's a very good sign. Any sort of running for Renault after the Jerez test is exactly what they needed. They said that there are problems that need to be fixed, and they'll be trying to fix those problems maybe up to the start of this test. And I think in the case of Red Bull, we're seeing very much that. But the fact that they got running in has got to be a fillip for them, and they'll solve it. They'll solve whatever the problems are, but it's just how much time you lose while you solve those problems.
And that's been another disappointing morning for the world champions Red Bull, who missed the first 4 hours of testing in Bahrain. The team only managed 21 laps over 4 days of first pre-season test in Jerez, and they spent most of this morning locked away in their garage. Sebastian Vettel is in the car for the first 2 days in Bahrain, and the team were very keen to make sure no one was getting a look at what was going on behind the screens at the front of their garage. But 4 hours and 15 minutes into the session, Vettel finally emerged. Team advisor Dr. Helmut Marko were keeping a close eye on things, looked reasonably relaxed. Vettel's new teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, is scheduled to take over the running for the last 2 days of the test on Friday and Saturday, and the team will be looking for a big improvement on what was a very disappointing test in Jerez.
This is a crucial test for the champions, the constructors and the drivers' champion. They need to start finding performance, but before they can do that, they've got to find reliability, and before they can find that, they've got to find a solution that works in both engine and packaging as well. And these are nervy times, I think, for Red Bull at the moment.
No problems for Mercedes, though. Plenty of running again for them. They completed more laps than any other team in Jerez, and it's been the same today. Lewis Hamilton's in the car for them. He and teammate Nico Rosberg are taking it in turns over the 4 days of this test, with Rosberg back in the car tomorrow. And it seems the Mercedes drivers are getting a bit of divine inspiration. He's tweeted a picture of himself this morning with spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, along with the message, "Great to meet you in Frankfurt. Thanks for your time." First team out on track this morning were Lotus. They missed the test in Jerez. So this is the first proper chance to see the E22 in action. Romain Grosjean is driving for them today. As you can see here, Lotus have gone for a forked nose on their car and are the only team to do so far. Fernando Alonso driving for Ferrari. Smoke came billowing out of his car on his way out. Did stop on that first lap, but the problem soon resolved. He was back out on the track. And you can just make out Adrian Sutil's Sauber in the distance here. His session interrupted briefly after he managed to spin the car. Despite that, Sauber have been one of the teams doing the most running this morning. And for live text updates throughout this second pre-season test in Bahrain, go to skysports.com/F1. A reminder, you can... It's been another disappointing morning for the world champions Red Bull, who missed the first 4 hours of testing in Bahrain. The team only managed 21 laps over 4 days of the first pre-season test in Jerez, and they spent most of this morning locked away in their garage. Sebastian Vettel is in the car for the first 2 days in Bahrain. The team were very keen to make sure no one was getting a look at what was going on behind the scenes at the front of their garage. But 4 hours and 15 minutes into the session, Vettel finally emerged. Team principal Christian Horner and team advisor Dr. Helmut Marko were keeping a close eye on things, looked reasonably relaxed. Vettel's new teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, scheduled to take over the running for the last 2 days of the test on Friday and Saturday. And the team will be looking for a big improvement on what was a very disappointing test in Jerez.
This is a crucial test for the champions, the constructors and the drivers' champion. They need to start finding performance, but before they can do that, they've got to find reliability, and before they can find that, they've got to find a solution that works in both engine and packaging as well. And these are nervy times, I think, for Red Bull at the moment.
Getting nervier. We've just heard that Vettel has been back out, just stopped on track. Don't know what that is at the moment. No problems for Mercedes, though. Plenty of running again for them. They completed more laps than any other team in Jerez. Same story today. Car carries a message in support of Michael Schumacher, who remains in a coma following a skiing accident in December. Lewis Hamilton's in the car for them. He and teammate Nico Rosberg taking it in turns over the 4 days of this test, with Rosberg back in the car tomorrow. And it seems the Mercedes driver's getting a bit of divine inspiration. He's tweeted a picture of himself this morning with spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, along with the message, "Great to meet you in Frankfurt. Thanks for your time." First team out on the track this morning were Lotus. They missed the test in Jerez. So this is the first proper chance to see the E22 in action. Romain Grosjean is driving for them today. You can see here Lotus have gone for a forked nose on their car, the only team to do so far. Now Fernando Alonso is driving for Ferrari. Smoke came billowing out of his car on his way out. He did stop on that first lap, but the problem was soon resolved and he was back out on track. And here you can just make out Adrian Sutil's Sauber in the distance. His session was interrupted briefly after he managed to spin the car. Despite that, Sauber have been one of the teams doing most of the running this morning. Now, for live text updates throughout this second pre-season test in Bahrain, go to skysports.com/F1.
It's been another frustrating day for Red Bull on day one of the second pre-season test in Bahrain. Rachel Brooks can join us live from there now. Rachel, who's been fastest so far?
Well, at the moment, Nico Hülkenberg is topping the timesheets in the Force India. Back to his old team, of course, the team he was with in 2012. He was with Sauber just for 1 year last year and proved towards the end of the season just how quick he is. Well, he's in a Force India now with that Mercedes engine that's proved so good so far in pre-season testing, and he's topped the timesheets here today in Bahrain, putting in some great laps in that car. Trying to catch up, really. They had a few issues in Jerez, but nothing too much to worry about for them. And a good performance from him today. Fernando Alonso, second quickest in the Ferrari. They had that start this morning where he left the pit lane in clouds of smoke to come back very late. So after that lap, he actually stopped out on track, but then brought the car back to the garage. And they seem to have resolved all their problems. And Fernando Alonso He's been second fastest today and getting in quite a lot of mileage here at this circuit. And Lewis Hamilton also getting in the miles, 74 laps or so far today for him. And Kevin Magnussen, the new McLaren driver, has looked really quick. The team I'm hearing very impressed with him so far in his speed. And Kevin Magnussen definitely want to watch out for that McLaren, also powered by that Mercedes engine that seems to be faring so well so far. But Magnussen want to watch out for this season for sure in that McLaren. We'll see what Jenson Button can do when he gets in the car.
Well, we heard earlier that Red Bull spent most of the morning, well, locked in their garage. Did they get any better today?
Well, not really, Natalie. They did. 4 hours and 15 minutes we had to wait to see sight of the RB10 here at the circuit. And when it did eventually go out, Sebastian Vettel did his installation lap, came back in, and they then make changes to the car. And he went out again. But unfortunately, after just 13 laps, he stopped on track. Had to get out himself with a fire extinguisher and use it on the back of the car. But it didn't look too serious. He then escorted the car back to the garage and on the back of the low loader as it came into the pit lane. And they dropped him and the car off back at that Red Bull garage where the car has spent so much of today. Now, Red Bull had those issues we saw in Jerez. They only managed 21 laps out there. They had those issues before, and they're trying 2 different solutions, I'm being told, here in Bahrain to resolve their issues. So that may have been one of the solutions. They've tried it. Doesn't seem to work. Seems to have been a bit of overheating, which is the problem they've been suffering from all along. So they'll now try and put the second solution into practice and see if that works. But it's cooling issues that are really causing problems for Red Bull. Everything's so tightly packaged under the shell of that car that there's not enough airflow around, and it's causing things to overheat. So that's the major hurdle they have to get over at the moment, but definitely not the days running they would have wanted coming into this test here in Bahrain.
They weren't the only ones, though, in trouble today, Rachel. Lotus got out this morning, but what happened to them?
Well, we finally got to see the car. It wasn't in Jerez, and it left the pit lane this morning. We had a half-hour delay while they waited for enough marshals to appear at the circuit, but the Lotus did eventually get out. Roman Grosjean driving it today, of course. His new teammate Pastor Maldonado will be in it later this week, but he took it out onto the track. But they only managed 7 laps today, Lotus, and we're hearing that there was a software issue and then a battery problem for them in that car. They've been quite pleased with it up until that point. They've managed to get 100 kilometres into the car on 2 filming days at Jerez in Spain last week, and now they seem to have developed a couple of problems here, but they're hopeful of resolving those and it won't be too big a deal. However, they are behind the other teams in terms of running. Elsewhere today we saw the Mercedes again going very well. Lewis Hamilton getting in a lot of laps in that car, and it looks pretty quick. So Mercedes seem to be ahead of the field in terms of how far their testing programme is going. Little problem for McLaren earlier, some overheating at the back of the car, but they are resolving that and getting Kevin Magnussen back out again onto the track. And elsewhere, Toro Rosso had to wait until nearly 3 o'clock this afternoon to get out on track. Another car with a Renault engine, Danny Kvyat, going out, but only briefly before his car also stopped on track. So still problems for those Renault-powered cars here in Bahrain.
OK, Rachel Brooks, thank you very much for now. And
now, it's been another disappointing day of testing for the world champions Red Bull, who managed just 13 laps on day 1 of the second testing in Bahrain. The team spent the first half of the day working in the garage. They were keen to stop anyone getting a look at what they were up to. Sebastian Vettel was in the RB10 today. Actually did emerge 4 hours and 15 minutes after the session began. Well, team principal Christian Horner and team advisor Dr. Helmut Marko were keeping a very close eye on things. Looked responsibly relaxed. Vettel's new teammate Daniel Ricciardo is scheduled to take over the running on Friday and Saturday. Red Bull had made it out on track. Vettel managed just 13 laps, as I said, before he was on his way back to the garage, having stopped on the track. Well, the world champion made his way back in on top of a truck, as you can see. And Red Bull's day of testing came to a premature end again. Well, it was Force India's Nico Hulkenberg who posted the fastest lap time as teams using Mercedes power units filled the top 4 places on the time sheets. And despite some early issues with the Ferrari causing smoke to billow out of the back of Fernando Alonso's car, he was the second fastest. And Lewis Hamilton was third. Plenty of running again for Mercedes, who were the team that completed the most laps in the first test in Jerez a couple of weeks ago. Hamilton's car carries a message of support for Michael Schumacher, who remains in a coma following a skiing accident in December. Well, Hamilton and teammate Nico Rosberg are taking it in turns over the 4 days of this test, with Rosberg back in the car tomorrow. Well, it seems the Mercedes drivers been getting a bit of divine inspiration. Tweeted a picture of himself with the spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, along with a message, "Great to meet you in Frankfurt. Thanks for your time." Wow, it's been a good day for McLaren. Their new driver, Kevin Magnussen, was fourth fastest overall. He completed 81 laps in total. That's just one fewer than Adrian Sutil in the Sauber, who did the most running today. And this test has also provided us with a first look at the new Lotus in action. Lotus missed the first test in Jerez as the E22 wasn't quite ready. Romain Grosjean was in the car for them, but only managed 8 laps. But as you can see here, Lotus, they've gone for a forked nose. The only team to do so far. Now, world champion Sebastian Vettel insists there's no reason to panic despite another frustrating day for Red Bull on the opening day of the second pre-season test. Well, Red Bull only managed 21 laps over 4 days in Jerez a few weeks ago and spent all morning locked in their garage, keeping the car well and truly out of view. Vettel's in the car for the first 2 days in Bahrain. Well, he emerged from the garage 4 hours, 15 minutes into the session. Team principal Christian Horner and team owner Helmut Marko are in the pit lane watching. But Vettel only completed 13 laps before the car stopped out on the track, appearing to suffer from more overheating problems, and the German seemed unimpressed when he returned to the paddock.
You make your car as drivable as you can. We're obviously still at the beginning. I don't see any reason to panic. You know, it's in a way it's a surprise, but in another way it is not, because we knew that it's a massive challenge. There's a lot of work ahead of us. We didn't expect to have that many problems right at the beginning, but it is what it is, and I know that everyone is 100%, you know, for working flat out, trying to find solutions as quick as we can.
This is a crucial test for the champions, the constructors and the drivers' champion. They need to start finding performance, but before they can do that, they've got to find reliability, and before they can find that, they've got to find a solution that works in both engine and packaging as well. And these are nervy times, I think, for Red Bull at the moment.
Meanwhile, Lotus unveiled their new car after missing the first test in Jerez. Romain Grosjean has been given the car for the first 2 days. Made it out early. Well, the E22 has an unusual 2-pronged front nose and uses the same Renault power unit as the Red Bull. Like the Red Bull, they struggle to get much time out on track. Grosjean completing 8 laps, finishing slowest.
There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of buttons to turn and change, more than in the past. More gears to change as well with this new gearbox and 8 ratios. But I don't think I've learned massively today. But we have the teamwork to do some at home, and hopefully we get some more testing before we head up to Melbourne.
Well, Ferrari are chasing their first title since 2007. They had a mixed day, starting with some worrying signs in the morning as smoke came out of the back of the car, forcing Fernando Alonso to stop on his first lap. But he returned, getting plenty of laps in, and finished second fastest. Once again, Mercedes looked strongest. They completed more laps than any other team in the first test in Jerez, and they continued that good start in Bahrain, with Lewis Hamilton clocking 74 laps. Once again, the car carries a message of support for Michael Schumacher, who remains in a coma following a skiing accident in December.
It's been really impressive just to see everything coming together and to be able to come to the test and get the mileage. Especially when obviously everyone's showing just how difficult it is with these new regulations. Today was kind of a test again for all the reliability things, and but it's a good thing. Every time you want issues to come up, because obviously you don't want them to happen when the season starts. So even though it's kind of a downer, if something does stop you during the day, you actually do want that so then guys can get on it soon.
McLaren looked to have put a disappointing 2013 behind them with another strong showing. Rookie Kevin Magnussen's been given the car for the first 2 days. Clocked up 81 laps during the course of the day. But it was Nico Hülkenberg that was fastest on day one with Force India. The German time of 1 minute 36.8 seconds was quicker than Sebastian Vettel's fastest lap in the 2013 Bahrain Grand Prix. So Mercedes-powered cars dominate the day, setting 3 of the top 4 times. Sebastian Vettel was 5th, over 3 seconds slower than Hülkenberg, while Romain Grosjean was slowest in Lotus's season debut. So less than a month to the opening race of the...
Kate, thanks very much. World champion Sebastian Vettel insists there's no reason to panic, despite another frustrating day for Red Bull on the opening day of the second pre-season test. Vettel would manage just 14 laps and finish the day well off the pace. Nico Hülkenberg was quickest in the Force India, while Lewis Hamilton undertook a race-style simulation as Mercedes-powered cars again piled up useful mileage.
Grim faces and an air of frustration around the Red Bull garage. They targeted this test to catch up on lost running, but spent the morning stuck behind their screens. Eventually, Sebastian Vettel headed out after lunch. His first registered time was 7 seconds off the pace. In terms of laps compiled, he'd barely make it into double figures, including 1 on the tow truck.
I don't see any reason to panic. You know, it's in a way it's a surprise, but in another way it is not, because we knew that it's a massive challenge. There's a lot of work ahead of us. We didn't expect to have that many problems right at the beginning, but it is what it is.
On a watching brief, Vettel's teammate spent most of the day observing rivals. He'd see Fernando Alonso's Ferrari belch smoke, but generally run well. Nico Hülkenberg's Force India beat the fastest lap at last year's Bahrain Grand Prix. He'd top a timesheet McLaren rookie Kevin Magnussen had led all morning. Perhaps most ominously, he'd watch Lewis Hamilton simulate race-style stints. Stints Red Bull must envy, with the season looming ever closer.
Well, it's more strange not to know how good the car is. We might have the best car, I don't know. So we can say that it's not the most reliable right now. But as I said, it's you know, that's what testing is for. So far, 0 points for everyone.
Red Bull bosses ended the day in deep discussion with their engine manufacturer Renault. With their development record, the best on the grid, they tend to finish the season strongly. This year, that could pay extra dividends. Vettel's branded double points for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix absurd, but might he yet need them?
No matter which way, I'm not a fan of the double points, because I don't understand the reason for it. But yeah, I hope that up to that point we have had lots of good races.
It's going to be a long, busy night in this Red Bull garage. Ahead of this test, they talked of little problems they were confident they would soon fix. That their teething issues continue will be a considerable headache for them and encouragement for their title rivals. Rachel Brooks, Sky Sports, Bahrain.